And look, and there's our friend Pi.
Hi.
Hey. All right. Well, we are
We can't
live.
hear you, Pi. Oh,
Yeah, Pi. We can't hear you. I think you're on
Hi,
mute.
goodbye.
There
Hi,
you
I'll
go.
go away. Have fun. Can't wait.
Okay. See you, Pi. We love you. Hey, everybody. Well, you just had a little preview of how much we love Pi, who is the director here at the Merchants House Museum, which is where we are right now. It is, what's today's date? February 7th, and we haven't been at the Merchants House since November, right?
Wow.
were we here in December? Did we have a show in December? No, I don't think we did
Yeah.
because of all the decorations and stuff.
Right.
And a Christmas Carol.
But we're here now. It's our first in the Spirit of Science show this year for 2025. Dr. Lee is off camera. There he is. And I'm sitting next to the lovely Matilda, Dan. And we are in the family room of the Merchants House Museum. Now, this room was primarily the family room. It was like the living room where people spent the most time. The parlors where we usually are upstairs were for more formal events. And
Only for guests, yeah.
For holidays and but this is, you know, the day-to-day where the Treadwell family hung out, where the kids probably did their homework and played when it wasn't nice out. So really, really cool. Let's see. Yeah, there we are. There's the fireplace, and then yeah, beautiful. And all of this is original to the house. I'm trying not to get Lee in. Everything here is original. Original to the house. So you know that couch in the back, and you know these tables behind us. These were all used by the Treadwells back in the 1800s. So very, very cool. We got a really kind of interesting show tonight. But before we get going, we got to talk about the evil developers that are putting up a
Still
office
dealing with
building.
it. We're still
An office building in New York City. Like they need more office buildings.
65%
There we go.
vacancy rate in New York City office buildings.
Yeah, I mean, I work in a big office building, and we've got 11 empty floors.
Yeah.
So there's no need to put an ugly office building right next door, because it would just be catastrophic to the Merchants House, and then everything would have to be taken out of the house. It would be years. It would just be a disaster. So if you can visit the Merchants House website, it's the merchantshouse.org, and you can sign a petition. It takes about 30 seconds. And if you wanted to donate any kind of money, you can do that online, or you can stop by the Merchants House and take a tour and get something for your money. Leave some money in the birdcage, and help keep us keep this jewel of New York City running, and got to keep the Treadwells happy.
And you can sign the petition even if you don't live in New York City, because tourism is so big that the opinions of people outside of New York City who might come here matter a lot. So no matter where you are in the world, you can sign the petition.
Yeah. So tell your friends that are living in Auckland to sign the petition.
So you know what really gets me about it? The community does not want it. The community doesn't want it here. The community has voted against having it here.
Yeah, and
so it's not even like it would be an asset to the community.
No.
It would be an asset to the developer only.
And whoever on the city's board or in the
who they agree
whoever's getting a little who's getting a little kickback. So yeah. So let's stop them. Let's stop them.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so on with the show. Sorry, we might be a little rusty. It's been a couple months. Tonight we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about which do you want to talk about first? Do you want to talk about the tower, or do you want to talk about the telepathy tapes?
I want to talk about the tower first, because the telepathy tapes we're going to talk a lot about, and also we're going to take comments and questions from people.
Yeah,
I think so. If you have anything to say about this podcast, it was the #1 podcast in the country. I'm sure people have opinions both in favor and not in favor of what it has presented, and it's data and things like that. So please chime in once we get to that part of the show. And we're actually piloting this new thought of reviewing things on the show. So let us know if you like that. You want more things to review.
Reviewing stuff just without, it's not
Right.
officially.
Right.
But maybe people have something they want reviewed.
Send in ideas for.
Yep, and if you want to make a comment, or if you want to tell us anything you like, there's a chat button down on the bottom of the Zoom screen. And there's also a Q&A button on the bottom, and a raise your hand if you wanted to raise your hand. But yeah, let's get on with the show. So we're going to talk about the Treadwell Tower. Now, just before we get into that, I got to tell you that why am I red?
Well, there's something up with the camera. See how blurry it is? It's like when you moved it to go around the room, it went out of focus and it never focused itself.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
You're still red, but
Yeah,
at least you're
I'm still red. So now I'm just red in high def. So before we talk about the Treadwell Tower, I'm going to talk a little bit about Dr. Lee, who from the beginning of your involvement here at the Merchant's House, Dr. Lee has been inventing and building his own equipment. And some of this, I guess we can call it equipment, but it's tailored to this house, and it's tailored in some cases directly to rooms.
Right.
And Lee does this all on his own, and he's really done some pretty amazing stuff. And I feel like he's stepped it up a notch now.
Yeah.
After a few years being here and knowing what works, what doesn't work, what's gonna make more sense as far as collecting data. So Lee, where did you come up with the idea? And we're going to call this the Treadwell Tower.
Yeah.
So
to build the tower, is kind of, I mean, all this comes down to like investment of time and money to do this stuff, and it's just kind of the increasing.
Was it especially kicked into high gear after October, after all the activity in October?
Yeah, and the
for
previous
sure.
data we gathered is just kind of accumulating and just kind of convincing me more and more that there's amazing stuff to document here, and so it's it's warrants more and more everything invested into it. And then also just working with the museum, like just realizing that how incredibly unique this opportunity is to like be able to do a long-term investigation, research, whatever at a location. And the location, like you said, like in October, like there were some pretty cool events here where
Witnessed by the public, not just museum staff.
Yeah, multiple individuals in the same date, time, place, seeing the same thing happening. Yeah, like it's just kind of that combined with the previous data we've collected and described a little bit on the show, it sort of made me want to take the next step. And part of the next step of that is the whole idea behind this research is not just to have some gee whiz stuff that we can show, on this show, but to, if we can get this stuff into mainstream science, it's about establishing it in a way that can be repeated by others and, and published in like legit peer-reviewed journals.
So specifically, what is the Treadwell Tower going to do?
Yeah, so the one of the big sort of holy grails of this research is you can record something that may seem like a quote unquote anomaly with a single type of sensor, and our focus previously was taking a single type of sensor and putting them into grids, and that sort of helps define like this is potentially anomalous versus not, right?
Right, if multiple sensors went off.
Exactly, yeah.
It wasn't just a sensor tripping or something like that.
Yeah, so if you have a grid of the same sensor and a localized sub-region of that grid gets activated, and let's say it gets activated in like the silhouette of a person, like how the heck did that happen? Like it's not like a microwave turning on the next floor. So we've gotten some stuff kind of along those lines. And so the next step beyond that is like, okay, now let's use multiple types of sensors. And if each of them is seeing something that, could be an anomaly or maybe not, like when you have those two together, like how many natural phenomena exhibit something that can be detected by both these sensors?
Right.
It's about getting a combination of sensors that can detect things in that way to exclude any possibility of it being anything that's not anomalous, basically.
Got it.
So the real key is using multiple different types of sensors to detect anomalous things happening at the exact same time in different ways, to exclude the possibility of it being anything normal or anything currently understood as science.
Did you put the picture out?
not yet.
Yeah.
I'm
I
trying
mean,
to.
yeah, the picture doesn't do that well to illustrate that concept really. It's kind of like a mess of wires and circuitry. But like that's actually the top of the tower, and below that tower is where there's several more sensors. And they're all kind of set up in a way that they're clustered together so that it kind of facilitates ensuring that they're all able to detect the same thing.
There we are. I've got, I just put
Yeah, cool.
the photo up here.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, so there's one caveat to what Dan was saying of like, yeah, I make things tailored to the house, but whenever I can, I try to make use of off-the-shelf parts, off-the-shelf sensors, and use them in ways, or combine them in ways, or record data from them in ways that are tailored to the house and tailored to this research. So in that photo, for instance, you can see there's two off-the-shelf sensors, right?
Yeah.
But I'm feeding that data into a custom circuit that's that big mess of wires there that records the data in a way that makes it analyzable and makes it convincing that we've observed something anomalous.
Okay.
So one
Like a data logger in there.
exactly, exactly, yeah. So one big part of saying that something is anomalous is recording a baseline, just like recording, okay, how common is this? Does it happen every day at 3 p.m. when somebody turns on the microwave, or is it, happening once a week or at certain, whatever. So being able to record continuously, like Dan said, like with a data logger type thing, and in a location like this where they let us set up these sensors for long-term recordings, those two things are incredibly important to defining something as, anomalous, especially now that we combine multiple sensors at the same time too.
Right, and as far as I know, there's lots of gadgets, and ghost hunters and paranormal investigators love their gadgets, and there's something every month. It seems like somebody's pulling something out of their
And you
hat.
don't approve.
No, I do approve. I do approve, but it's not proof of anything.
Right.
They're not using them correctly, basically.
Right.
Using them in controlled conditions that can be repeated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So correctly is a broad, I mean, they're using it correctly if they want to get a kick out of ghost hunting, which is a thing, and that's a goal. But if they want to prove it scientifically, yeah.
Yeah, people walk around with K2 meters, and the K2 meter lights up and people go crazy. And it could be a cell phone, it could be a walkie-talkie, it could be 100 different things.
Right.
And then, a K2 meter picking up alternating current, because that's what they pick up. They pick up alternating current. It's people go, oh, it went to green, so it must be a ghost. No, it's picked up a magnetic field. So
I barely watch any TV ghost shows now that I know like all the inside.
To me, it makes it more interesting because when you understand that stuff, you can throw out the 70% that's like probably crap.
I would
but
say
then
it's more than 70%.
Yeah, maybe.
Using those sensors where the stick figure shows up.
Yeah, I mean, and it's impressive and it looks cool on TV. And if you're doing a lecture for somebody who's not in the know, not that we're in the know, but somebody who's, heard about a lecture about ghosts and wants to go check it out, you're going to play that and people are going to freak out. When it's really just doing what it's supposed to do.
But
you can probably stop with the picture.
Again, I like watching people use that because it's actually fun trying to decode like, oh no, look, it's that lamp.
Yeah, exactly. It's the door jam. It's
But there's like you said, it's not 30%, but like maybe 5% where it's like there's nothing there. Like they're pointing it down a friggin' hallway and I don't see any object there. And like, how the heck? Why is there a friggin' stick figure? There's a small percentage where I'm like, that's
see, I was talking to somebody about this and they were really hard saying, Dan, no, man, that's a spirit. And I'm like, well, it's shooting out an infrared speckle pattern.
Yeah, it is.
And they're like, right. But I said, then why don't you turn your infrared camera on?
Yeah.
And you should be able to see somebody. And why is it only picking up a stick figure? Why is it not picking up clothes?
Yeah.
If it's reflecting back something, it's.
So I did an experiment along those lines to look at exactly what you're talking about, which is you can get an infrared camera, right? And I got a little, you can buy those little ultrasonic humidifiers from Amazon. They cost like $5. And when you turn them on, the thing vibrates and a fine mist comes out. So I pointed one of those cameras at it and like just a normal infrared camera, and like the whole fact that you can see this mist with the infrared camera means that infrared light is reflecting off of it. And so therefore, like those stick figure things would pick it up as like a blob. And if that mist was in a human shape, like it would detect that, but you would also see it with a normal infrared camera as this mist shape.
Right.
So yeah, the one way that might not be the case is if those speckle patterns are in a wavelength of light that like the cameras can't pick up.
Right.
But that's generally not the case.
But also, how do we know that the app is not occasionally planting stick figures just so you keep coming back and bringing in
That's
more
really
revenue
good.
for the app?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'd say it's not necessary because it's easy enough, like we were saying, like to just point at something that.
Pointed at that light,
Exactly.
and it would
Exactly.
grow arms and
Yeah,
legs, and it
exactly.
would look like it's dancing, and if
Exactly.
you reached out, it would reach out to you,
Yeah.
because that's what the program is telling it to do.
Right.
Going, hey,
And
pick
your
your
arm,
arm.
and now it thinks your arm is its arm and.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I think those are like the new FLIR cameras, the forward-looking infrared,
Yeah.
where, when ghost hunters first came out and people were using that, but again, those things, it's a non-contact thermal thermometer. It's reading off a surface, not reading what's in the center.
Exactly, that's a big issue with it, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's not, the only way it can detect something in the center is if it's some sort of more solid mist of
Right.
temperature. But if it's literally just a temperature change in the air, like it can't detect it. I've done tests for exactly that. And
Yeah, we did one, we used a hair dryer.
Yeah.
And turn a hair dryer on.
To see the plume, right?
But we didn't.
Yeah,
We didn't
exactly.
see it. And because it wasn't on the wall behind us,
Yeah,
10 feet beyond. But
Yeah.
we put the hair dryer on the wall and heated up the wall, and it
Yeah.
was, right there. And it looked like a lot of the things you see on the ghost shows. So
Yeah.
it was if somebody running around with a hair dryer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now with this, when it's picking up data, what is it looking for?
Yeah, so it's looking for several things that we've recorded in the past, and it's looking for a correlation between multiple sensors. So we kind of have, if you like take all the, like I said, in all these ghost hunting shows, they're using various different sensors and they're getting little bloops, and like Dan said, like, that's not convincing because it's a single sensor. So if you take all those sensors, you put them together though, and like 3 different types of sensors all bloop at the same time, that might be something interesting, right? So we're looking at the electromagnetic spectrum, we're looking at the electrical field spectrum, the electrical fields, magnetic fields, so we're sort of looking at all things non-visible, and then some things visible as well, in different spectrums.
and what's actually exciting about this is people will be able to see it.
The tower itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
When is it gonna go up?
That's a good question. That comes down to when I'm able to finish the final testing and everything.
And we have to make poster boards explaining it.
Yeah, we're gonna put a little describer thing on top of it. I'm shooting for end of February, but a lot of things, including there's a lot of things coming up basically I'm shooting for the end of February.
Okay, and where did you decide it will be? Because we had talked about a couple of different locations.
So you helped out sort of scouting out locations where it could fit, and it seems like the second floor in between those. That's where you want.
That's where you want.
That and the kitchen, those are 2 places that could work well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And both of those are locations where we've recorded interesting data in the past.
Right. And so if it's successful and it brings in like some good data, would you consider building another one? And putting it in a different location in the house?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Okay.
And probably just narrow it down to like whatever sensor seems to be working best. So I'm not, spending incredible amounts of money on it. But
Right.
That could definitely happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is yet another reason to come visit the merchant's house. You gotta come and see it.
Is there audio connected to that?
No, I don't have any audio stuff on it yet.
Right.
No. Yeah. That's harder. I'm trying to keep it to stuff that has a really nice, steady, low noise baseline, so that it's really easy to analyze. And like audio stuff, there's always noises.
Especially here, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like that makes it hard to just kind of like look at and see if something's happening. But like, that's definitely an option. Like we can store tons of data, recording continuously. Yeah.
And what's the proximity that you need to be?
All the sensors have like an approximate reading distance of like 1 to 2 feet in front of it. Yeah, although some can go a little bit further.
Right.
But that's
Yeah, especially EMF stuff. EMF, you got to be almost right on top of it.
Yeah. Depends on the power of it exactly. Yeah. So Yeah,
So hopefully the Treadwells will be interested in what we're planting here.
Yeah.
yeah, well,
You leaning in and taking a look.
yeah, so along those lines, interestingly, like, we were describing this in October when all these people saw, multiple people saw what would they think was,
A full body
Full body
apparition, which
apparition.
is highly unusual. by the
Yeah.
way.
and that happens like a week or something after, we first proposed this idea to the Merchant's House admins, and so it's like, maybe the spirits are hearing about this and getting excited about it and, making themselves
Mhm.
more known, so
Right.
what exactly?
Yeah, and I think, when I first started coming here, 2005, 2006,
Yeah,
around then, it was really active when we came in and did an investigation. And, after my first 10 investigations, there was 8 investigations where we collected some pretty, you guys have heard it all, pretty amazing EVP.
Yeah.
And it's since tapered off, and we're not investigating the place as much as I would like to, but it certainly has tapered off a lot. And I think, we're dealing with people, we're dealing with Treadwells, and I think they maybe just bored of us walking around and
Doing
asking
the same old
questions.
thing, yeah.
And so maybe this might be interesting to them.
And exactly on those lines, the initial concept of doing this tower, I was thinking of like making kind of like a ghost like kiosk, like something that's like interesting for them to interact with.
Oh,
literally,
yeah.
like draws them to it. It's like maybe
Like that paint.
yeah,
application
exactly,
that I've
exactly,
had.
which we did a while ago too. So if there's
Mhm.
some way, if we use a sensor that we think can detect them, exactly, and we
Yeah.
make it do something for them, like play some music or like start
Mhm.
reading like a Charles Dickens song or something,
Interactive.
exactly.
Or a button that would play like classical music,
Exactly.
and hit this button and you hear
Yeah.
music for
Exactly.
30 seconds. And
Exactly.
maybe get them to keep.
Yeah, exactly.
The piano recording.
Yeah, we had the piano. I've caught the piano probably 10, 12 years ago. I caught the piano playing.
Yeah.
We were up in Mr. Treadwell's room, and we had a reporter here, and he was taking copious notes. And we didn't hear the piano when it played. It played like the last, the last couple of little bars of the song.
Yeah.
And we don't want to actually, okay, yeah, we'll talk about that. Stacy McGrath, I'm sorry, Stacy. And we had 3 recorders going up in Mr. Treadwell's room, really coming off on one recorder. And you could hear everybody clearly. It wasn't like one recorder was picking up more than the other 2. It was all pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And it only came across on one recorder, which was interesting. But
Yeah.
let's see, Stacy. Hey, Stacy, thanks for the question. She wants to know if we could speak briefly about what activity was seen in October.
Yeah.
Go ahead, babe.
Okay, so on one of the ghost tours, 3 separate people saw Gertrude
At the same time.
at the same time doing the same thing. They did not speak to each other, so they didn't know anybody else had seen
They
it.
didn't know each other.
They didn't know each other. They all separately came down and reported to the staff and identified her from a photograph.
Yeah.
And one of them, the one detail to that I like is like the guy was there with his girlfriend.
It was his sister, yeah.
Yeah.
He kept saying to his sister, "Don't you see her?" And the sister couldn't see her.
Yeah, during the tour, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Why isn't anybody else talking about the lady in the corner?" And she's like, "What lady?"
Yeah,
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, would we consider that scientific proof? We can't replicate it, but
Yeah, I mean,
3
exactly. So we're working on like taking the information from that and like
Right.
putting it into a more replicable thing where we can gather that kind of data. Yeah.
right, right.
Somebody seeing a meteor is not scientific proof,
Right.
And it's a personal experience, and that's what these people had, all the same personal experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of them was a 12-year-old boy. I forgot his name the whole night. He investigated with us too. What was his name? Jonathan? I think it was
Thomas.
Thomas. But he was a cool little kid, and I talked to him about 40 minutes after he had this experience. And
Because you were here that night.
I was here. I was doing a tour. I was doing a 9:30 tour, and I think this happened on an 8 o'clock tour. And excuse me. And I talked to him afterwards. They said, "Hang around and talk to Dan." And he said everything right.
Mhm.
And I've talked to so many people that have had a personal experience, and they say these things, and they're little red flags. And yeah, I saw that in a movie too. And this little guy, he did everything right.
They all three people separately described the exact same thing that happened, which was Gertrude was sitting at the writing desk in Eliza's bedroom, got up and leaned across the bed to lean in to listen to the tour guide.
Wow. And the tour guide
Yeah, setting.
felt something.
The tour guide thought she
She
saw
heard like a dress.
her eye, but she was very focused on her tour because the way that the tours go, we do multiple tours in a night. So you have to get out of one room because
Yeah.
another group is following to come in.
Yeah, they do every half an hour. A tour takes off
Mhm.
on into the merchant's house. So it's pretty choreographed, and you can't really hang out
Right.
too long.
Right.
But in the future, hopefully, if something like that happens, stay in the room.
Yeah.
Just shut the door.
Something's happening, let's get out of here. And what you see sometimes in the shows, something's happening, but they go, well, let's go down to the right place. Mind just holding. You know, you gotta go here for it.
All right, let's talk about the telepathy tapes.
The telepathy tapes. All right. I did not know about the telepathy tapes until you told me about the telepathy tapes.
And I was turned on to it by my former student and friend, Callie, who is not watching tonight, but may watch the repeat.
Come on, Callie.
Yeah, so I listened to it in the car with my husband. We listened to
your card ride.
well, we
You're trying to analyze.
no, it was like over a weekend. So we listened to it on the way to where we were going and on the way home, and then as we were running errands and things like that. So it took about a weekend to listen to it. And then emailed the guys, texted the guys about it, and told them, you got to listen to this.
Yeah, and I didn't get around to it until like 2 weeks later.
I know,
Yeah.
because he can forget what I say and
Yeah.
recommendations that I make.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
then,
the only time I have to listen is on the subway
Mhm.
or on the MTA.
Yeah.
On the Long Island Railroad. The only time I got a chance to listen to it, but I listened to a few
But you
of them.
both did listen. You didn't listen to the whole thing?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
Not all the episodes.
Uh-huh.
No, I couldn't listen to all the episodes.
and initially, I thought it was just gonna be like a rehack of like what I already knew, like all the telepathy experiments that have been done with like the Rhine Center and
Mhm.
Dan Sturges experiment and stuff, and like it was absolutely not that. It was
Mhm.
totally new stuff. So I was
Mhm.
blown away when I
Why don't
started.
you describe what they're
Maybe
doing?
maybe if you finish listening to it, you'll feel differently. Because Dan is the skeptic. He's the only one.
I'm not
Skeptic.
saying it's BS. I'm saying like what we were talking about with, does that mean there's a ghost? What's happening, does that mean that it's telepathy? You know, what's going on, does it
They're
mean that it's telepathy?
non-speakers. They're non-speakers, and they are telling.
Well, why don't you explain, you were saying they're non-speakers, but
So-
explain what's going on.
So the children that we're talking about are specifically autistic non-speakers who use letter boards to spell out. That's how they communicate,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
It all came about because parents started to feel like their children could read their minds. So the children could read what the parents were thinking.
Giving the impression of that, yeah. And the one sort of thing that everybody's jumping onto for decent reason, at least for initial criticism, but not for like long-term criticism, the one you think about it, is the extreme controversy behind exactly this phenomena happening
board.
like 20 years ago or something. Yeah.
Right.
So there's the general technique that this is sort of under the umbrella of is quote unquote facilitated communication,
Mhm.
which I think it was like 20, 30 years ago or something. Like it was like a big thing.
It's still controversial. It's still
It
very,
is,
very
but
controversial.
that's the key though. They've corrected how to do it to avoid or to start to avoid the parts that were controversial 20 something years ago.
Well, they realized that that for many of they're called spellers, these children. They only need a physical assistance in the very beginning.
Exactly.
Because of their the issues, the problems that they have with their orientation in space.
Yeah.
They need a grounding force, so they need like a touch.
Yeah.
So what they found was that the physical assistance could be slowly withdrawn, and the child would remember.
Yeah. Although, as far as I know now, the way it's done by almost everybody is they're not touching the child at all. Like they're holding onto the board and they're moving, and that adds a
Well,
little bit
they
of
could
controversy.
move,
Exactly,
yeah, they
moving
could
the board around.
But none of these kids in the, like, cause I went to the website and I subscribed to it,
Yeah.
like, none of the children they are holding the board themselves.
Exactly. So that's what's partly removing this controversy, the fact that they are able to, through training, like evolve into that capability. But
Yeah.
the past controversy, just to give people a little bit of background, it was pretty messed up actually. So like everybody was doing it by just like holding their hands, the child's hand, and like almost like a Ouija board kind of thing. They're supposed to be holding it passively and to just sort of assist them in holding, beating gravity and letting them hold their hand up and type out what they want to type out. And when it was the first time came out, everybody was blown away, like, oh my God, like all of a sudden, like my child can communicate and they're so smart and like they started like acing math tests and like, winning, writing amazing essays and stuff. And then all of a sudden, like one kid typed out like, my dad's been, sexually abusing me. And like, oh, damn, okay, let's take this guy to court. And so the judge is like, okay, we need to have evidence that like this child is actually typing this. And so they put a divider between like the assistant and the child. They showed the assistant one photo, they showed the child another photo, said like, type out what you see. And 100% of the time they type out what the facilitator saw and not what the child saw. It's like, okay, well, you're full of crap, like get out of here. And so then that was on like 60 Minutes, everything. And everybody's like, oh, these poor parents, like they were just so desperate and like, this is all bullshit. And they fell into this trap of thinking their child could actually do this. And none of it's actually true. And possibly none of that was true, but I'd say that's probably untrue too. Because now, like you said, they revised the technique. They've gotten the kids to learn how to not need any physical contact at all, to literally use a keyboard that's on the friggin' table.
Right.
And yet they're still able to do it and they're able to get to that point. So that basically probably eliminates that possibility.
Well, and so not only are they able to use the speller independently, they can report exactly what their parent is thinking. Like, and in part of the experiment, the experimenter would tell the parent, okay, here's a card with a sentence on. You go into that room and think of the sentence, and then the child would type out the sentence.
That what you just described isn't true. It's close to true, but it's not true in a very key factor. Like they never, in the experiments that they presented, they never had the parent go into a separate room. They're always in the same room. And that's a big criticism, and for valid reason. And the sort of the history behind why that's a valid criticism is like Clever Hans. You guys know that story?
No.
So Clever Hans was a horse in I don't even know, a long time ago, black and white age. And his owner was like, oh, Clever Hans like can do math. And so he started stamping out answers to math questions, and he would go around towns and like show everybody this.
Yeah, I remember seeing that like on the Mike Douglas show.
And like it was really cool. And like people were trying to, like scientists at the time were like, oh, this is really cool. What the hell's happening? How's this horse doing math? And so they tried all this experiments, nobody could figure it out. And finally they figured out like, whoa, there are all these subtle cues. The guy doesn't even realize he's giving them, the trainer. But it's in his eye of just like his facial reaction as the horse is tapping out the math answer, like, a little bit of relief comes over him when the horse gets up to the number that's the correct number. And then the horse is like, oh, time to stop. Like my owner.
Right. I see that.
And when it's not, they tried some experiments without the owner. And but then it seemed like the horse was reacting to the overall crowd's reaction. Right. And so like they weren't trying to trigger the horse, and yet like they were, right? So there wasn't even anything nefarious going on. And same thing can do with these parents.
So horse is just tapping his hook, and then when everybody starts going, wow, it stops.
Exactly. So that's why everybody's so scared about like, oh, but the parent's still in the room. And no matter how like, likely it is that like they're not able to send these complex
cues. But didn't they do some where they blindfolded the child?
Yes, so that's where the other problem is. If you look at some of the videos that you have to pay to get access to,
$9.99, it's not a lot.
It's not a lot. But a lot of people are criticizing these videos. They're saying, oh, like these videos are not actually showing at all what they're describing the podcast. They're actually showing, something that is obviously that the parent is influencing them. Like in one video, the child has a blindfold on, and the parent has their hand over that blindfold. They're literally like holding it against the child's head. And the child has to take these colored things.
Pushing their head.
That's exactly what it's so obvious in the video that that's what's happening, unfortunately. And like whether the parent knows that or not, but like the parent is like literally pushing their head left and right to like guide them where to put this possible stick. So that's obviously, I'd say 99.9% probable like inadvertence, not trueness. However, there are other videos that are not like that. And yet these skeptics that are super skeptical about this, they either don't mention those videos and just kind of like pretend like they don't exist, or they mention them and they interpret them in a way that is not actually valid. If you look at the video close enough, like it's not true what they're saying of like, oh, the child isn't actually like pointing at the letters and stuff. So I think there is truth to it, but it's like currently with the experiments that have been done so far, hidden to an extent that skeptics can make a convincing enough argument and just ignore a small percentage of data to like basically tell people this is bullshit.
Right.
Well, you know what got me was this whole hill thing.
Yeah.
Like the hill, like all of these kids who didn't know each other would talk about going to the hill and meeting other people. And I think it was John Paul. There was a kid in California that had never met John Paul, had never spoken to him, but had communicated with him telepathically and knew all of this stuff about John Paul that there is just no way he could have known. Right. That's what got me. That shared experience is what really got
me. That stuff's intriguing, but then the problem is like, oh, that's just some parents telling you that their child said so and so, and it's not like an experiment, you know? That's like so.
Right.
I agree, especially if a parent or a child, like we've met parents like that. That really want their kid to be unique. So they're gonna say yes to whatever. I think your child is what do they call those white kids? Those really pale kids.
Albino.
Albino, but there's somebody watching probably knows there's a name for these children of the light. And of course, and I've worked with.
And we're all like that, by the way, humans, like we all want to be special and like, so it's, I do, you do, everybody. So that's not like a criticism. It's just like, that is a way that humans behave and like have to be cognizant of that.
Some are more indigo children. Yes. Thank you. Summer. And I'm not a skeptic about telepathy at all. And
this is very interesting where you're going with this. Say more. So what's the issue with it, with these?
Please talk yourself.
And it's not with the children. You've got these humans involved. You've got these parents involved. So it's flawed in that sense. But I don't know them. So as somebody who's been doing this for a while, I'm like, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt until, I'm there in the room and can see it and make sure. But I believe telepathy, and especially between family members, exists. You have, the whole twins thing. And, when I'm in the room with my mother, genetically, I am my mother and my father, and I've got their DNA in me, and on a cellular level, I have their history. So how could you not be connected? Dean Radin in Tangled Minds talked about, how we're all connected. We all come from the same thing.
Right.
We're all part of the same thing. So how could you not, especially genetically, how could you not be predisposed to get information somehow? And especially a kid who's hasn't been jaded and told that that's not possible, it's probably normal for him. Like, until people start saying, no, ESP doesn't exist and you can't, there's only 5 senses. And they're not being told that.
But there's very specific information that's being communicated.
I totally
very specific.
It's very interesting stuff. It's kind of along the same lines of like I was describing the Treadwell Tower, right? It's like it takes time to build it and it's expensive. Scientists have been screwed over by believing in this kind of stuff so many times that like at this point they're like, I'm not even gonna look in your direction until you friggin' prove this beyond any kind of doubt, because I'm fucking tired of looking like an idiot, right? That's the thing. It's like, that's the problem. There's so many times when this kind of cool stuff comes up and then it's proven that, it's crap, that like people are just friggin' sick of it and they're sick of looking like idiots and they don't want to. And like, so somebody that's not afraid of looking like an idiot, like us and, people that want to do this experiment, like we're willing to put in the time to, try this stuff out. And it's because it's all about like, does the interest surpass the thresholds necessary to like waste your time and money on looking into this stuff? And if you think it's interesting enough, I think it's interesting enough, like, let's look into it more. It's fascinating.
And, and I think a lot of investigators or ghost hunters, they're using the SLR camera, SLS camera, whatever, the Xbox camera that gets these stick figures. That's enough for them.
Mhm.
that's enough for them. But you know what? Did you have an EMF meter down
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Did that go up at the same time?
Yeah,
Did you
yeah,
pick up any EVP? Did anybody have any kind of personal
Right.
experiences? Were you
Yeah.
with a psychic? Did you bring a psychic?
Yeah.
And those are all things. And I think people are just happy enough
Yeah,
when I got a stick figure. I'm good.
Yeah.
Let's go to the bar.
yeah,
And that's cool. That's fun, and if you enjoyed yourself, hey, God bless you.
yeah,
But it's not proof
Mhm.
yeah,
that there was a spirit in the room.
yeah.
But there was one experiment that they did where the communicator was outside of the room. There was at least one that they
There
did.
was one where like the kid was outside the room for like 2 minutes, and like she was trying to get the cameraman to like run into that room to like film. Like you could tell she was excited because like, oh, this is my chance to like
Right.
record this in the proper way.
Yeah.
But like the kid came like right back into the room, and then the mother was even relieved and stuff. So it was like,
Mm.
it was like I believe, this is past the threshold for me of interest. Like I'm fascinated by this stuff. I think
Mhm.
there is truth in it. I'm just trying to say like where the skeptics are attacking it,
Right.
but also the holes that they've left where there's some stuff that they've swept under the rug and they're ignoring. So
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
there's both, but there's a lot of appropriate criticism, but then there's also inappropriate criticism
Mhm.
and stuff like that. I think it's super intriguing, and there's different types of science, right? There's field research, like there's biologists that go out to the savannah in Africa and like videotape lions in their natural environment and like listen to the howls of monkeys, and they help decode what their language is. A lot of that is not experiments; they're just passively recording what's naturally happening, and you
Mhm.
gather enough data, you build up these statistical models of like, oh, it seems like this hoot means lion, this squeak means bird, or whatever, and then after gathering that data and coming up with this hypothesis, they conduct a little experiment where they play a little speaker sound of the hoot, and like you see the monkeys react as if there's a lion, right? So it's like there's different stages of science.
Right.
You have to just passively gather what's out there, and then you do the experiment. At the moment, this is kind of in the gray area. It's like, that stuff like you just described is like the passively gathering data of stories from parents telling you stuff. Now the next step is like the experiment. Let's see how can we detect these children going to the hill, quote unquote, and
Right.
can we put them doing stuff here.
In the follow-up, which you said you haven't listened to,
Yeah.
they actually a neurotypical person does go to the hill.
Yeah, I think I may have listened to that one.
Mhm.
Yeah, or I might not have. I don't know if you want to describe it a little bit because I don't remember.
It's called so the second season is called Talk Track.
Yeah,
And while Matilda's looking that up,
yeah,
a great point that you were just made a few moments ago is you can't figure all this out in one night investigation.
yeah.
And I think a lot of people go into an investigation and they go there and they do a night and they pick up an EVP or
Yeah.
their K2 meter went into green
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah,
That's
the
it.
opposite too. You're not going to disprove it with one night of investigation.
Exactly.
It's like,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, this place over 15 years now, we've gotten enough data and enough personal experiences and enough evidence, if you want to call it that,
yeah,
to say, all right, I'm pretty confident that, and I've never told anybody that I think the Treadwells are haunting the merchant's house.
yeah,
I said, there's stuff going on.
Yeah.
There's stuff going on. I don't know who it is.
yeah, yeah.
They're people are coming in, psychics, and saying,
Yeah.
that's Gertrude.
Yeah.
How do I know? How do they know?
Right.
Maybe it's somebody, they've never met Gertrude before.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's somebody coming in saying, I'm Gertrude.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, a great point is that, when I used to belong to a paranormal group and I left because one of my friends was saying, "Oh man, well, you're going to miss out on all these investigations." I said, "I'll take 2 good investigations a year,
Yeah.
over 30 of them.
Yeah.
And why do I need to go on investigations? I got a place right here.
Yeah.
We know the history. We know everybody that's lived there. Only
Yeah.
one family lived there.
Yeah.
I don't need to go anywhere."
Yeah.
So sometimes when I'm not doing investigations, people are like, "Oh, you don't investigate anymore." I'm like, "Yeah, I do, but
Yeah.
I got my place."
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
And along those lines, like you said, like you've been doing research here a long time, and we're actually incorporating some of those sensors that you collected some of those convincing data for into the Treadwell Tower, actually.
Right.
So, like, you conducted some experiments back then when you played audio before.
Mhm.
It wasn't just a passive recording, like you asked for a stimulus, and
Yeah.
it was a response occurred. So, now it's a matter of like making that more formulaic so that
Mhm.
like you don't need to be holding it, or any Joe Schmo can come in and do it essentially, whether or
Right.
not that happens, like building it into that recipe that can be repeated in a way by a freaking high school.
Yeah, that's why I'm so psyched that Lee came in here. It's because I don't know how to do this stuff, and I'm not a scientist. So you've taken what we've been doing to the next level. And, as far as I know, I almost said this earlier, as far as I know, there is no equipment made that can detect a ghost.
Mhm.
There's not. And we're getting into, like Lloyd Auerbach always says, you're looking at the wake of the boat, not the boat.
Mm.
So it's like saying that was a ghost is like standing on a beach and a wave comes up and goes over your feet and you go sailboat.
Yeah,
Right,
but it's the
right,
same thing.
right.
The only way I'm seeing you is by detecting the wake of light that's reflecting off your body. So, I mean, I don't feel like that's really saying anything that, relevant. I mean, we're
Right.
still, I'm detecting like the heat coming off your body, the light reflecting off it. Like I'm never, even when I touch you, like I'm actually touching the friggin' electrostatic force of
Right.
like my positive ions reflect, repelling your positive
That's right,
ions.
because we don't touch.
Exactly. I'm
Yeah.
never physically touching you. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So like, I feel like that's not really, I feel like it's not really that good of a statement. Like we have sensors that are detecting the wakes of these entities, just like my camera is detecting the wake of your body, So
Well, I think the point that Lloyd was trying to make was not every wave comes from a boat and not every EMF fluctuation
Right.
comes from a spirit.
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so it's hard to say, that EMF meter went off.
Absolutely.
Was that somebody waving their hand over it? Was it intentional PK or was
Yeah.
there a thunderstorm going?
Yeah.
It's, but if we had, that was happening while we picked up an EVP, while somebody had a personal experience, we had a psychic in the room going in and waving their hand over it.
Well, that's the scientific, I mean, that's
so that's
the basis of.
It's the equivalent of like how, if I did have a camera, how do I distinguish between seeing you or seeing a cardboard cutout of you? I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in the same room as a cardboard cutout, but like they've fooled me before. Person. And one way you can do it is multiple sensors. You have the camera, but you also have a heat sensor, right? Do cardboard cutouts give off heat? No. So now you have those two. It's like, okay, this is Dan. This is not a cardboard cutout Dan. So yeah, you piece them together.
So Lee, because you listen to it and you think there's meat on that bone, right? Tell us exactly why, as someone who is committed to the scientific method.
Yeah, it's about, like I said, like watching. I literally watched like skeptic videos on YouTube where they're saying that they've disproved it, and watching the same videos they've watched and seeing like, no, like you obviously weren't watching that fucking video because like you're saying something's happening that's not happening. Like they're saying that the child is not indicating, but like you can see that like they're literally like poking their, it's subtle, but like if you look at it, like they're poking their finger forward, like right before the mom sweeps away that board. And like if you want to prove or establish that they're full of shit, like it's easy to overlook that subtleness because you see up until that point you're just kind of like, oh, okay, it's obviously the mom doing this.
Right.
But like no, if you look closely enough, like their details, and I love that stuff. I like muddy water science where it's like it's very easy if you want to say it's bullshit to say it's bullshit.
Right.
But like when you look at enough detail, it's like no, there's actually something there, and like you just aren't looking at it right, and we have to do this experiment a little bit differently. So that's the thing. It's like there's meat on it, but it's like meat that's very small and hidden for most people that don't want to find it.
Right.
And if somebody who's poo-pooing all this stuff, you got to also know what his agenda is.
Exactly.
Is he going up for a huge grant?
Yeah.
In the next day or two?
Yeah.
And someone's going to see him on the internet looking for So there's all kinds of
It
different.
can be an unconscious bias. I think
Absolutely.
I think a lot of it is that people just actually don't really believe that children with severe autism can be intellectually on par.
Let alone frigging like telepathic. Yeah.
And there are many reasons why people would not want to believe that.
Absolutely.
Because really one big reason is that if that's true, we have to invest significant money in order to give those children the chance to, I mean,
I feel like that's the part.
services are expensive,
Yeah.
so people are like, you know, it's like someone with locked-in syndrome,
Yeah,
right? If they found out that there was a way that someone with locked-in syndrome could communicate,
yeah,
if it cost $1 million, they would have to make it available to everyone with locked-in syndrome.
yeah. That'd be
You
a good
know?
reason for like the mayor of a city maybe to not want it, but for the average person, like they're not
Yeah.
spending money to like support this kid. I think they're more scared of like subconsciously of just like this person that I thought is dumber than me might actually be like
Mhm.
Smarter than
somewhat
me.
smarter than me, and like
Yeah.
I'm actually the idiot, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
it always feels bad to look stupid. Nobody
Yeah.
likes to look stupid, and like, yeah, this is another way to be dumber than you thought you
Yeah.
were, you know?
Right.
And-
Remember, these are children that people thought didn't have language,
Yeah,
did not
yeah, yeah.
understand language.
Yeah.
And here they are typing out
Yeah.
full and complex communication.
My friend who I was talking to you guys before we started the show, and his name is Adalki, and he's got a son named Ethan, and Ethan has cerebral palsy, and it was at birth, an accident at birth, and where he didn't have any oxygen going to his brain for a significant amount of time, and he's quadriplegic now, and he can't communicate, and I've known Adalki for 15 years now, and I've met Ethan a bunch of times, and I doubt, does he understand you? Like, he would tell me that Ethan would have seizures and just
Yeah.
really all kinds of stuff. I said, but like, if you talk to him, does he understand you? And he goes, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
Like, he gets it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't tell if he understands English.
Right.
But it's almost like a form of locked-in syndrome. And,
Right.
and a friend of mine's wife had suffered from locked-in
Oh,
syndrome. It was
no, that's my
horrible.
worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Did she come out of it?
No.
Oh, my God.
Part of the thing is, it's like, you know, if there's like enough brain, you know, some people might say like, is there enough brain matter to really be able to process these signals, and like, is it even physically possible? I mean, the thing is, like with this telepathy based thing, if it is legit, then like it's not like, yeah, the brain does stuff, but like there's a spirit or soul or something that's like flying to the hill, whatever. There's some consciousness that's like outside of the physical matter of our brain.
Well, you know, we believe that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's what we're researching
That's what
here.
we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So if that's true, like no matter how quote unquote brain dead somebody is, like that soul is still there, and that soul can hear you and feel you, and you know, it's kind of a beautiful thing. It's kind of like, doesn't matter if I open up the skull and there's nothing in there, like if there's a soul in that body, like it can hear you, and it, you know, it can feel love and give it and everything.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, as a parent, I would not want my kid to be able to read my mind. I mean, I kind of feel bad for them.
I can even parents to read minds.
Read my
Well,
mind.
imagine the kid, they don't want that either, probably. You know?
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole mess of stuff coming at them.
Yeah.
But there's so many examples of not just kids, but artistic people that have incredible abilities.
Yeah.
And
Savants.
there was that famous one. They took a young man up in a helicopter, and they went around New York City, and then he'd never been to New York City before, and certainly never been
And then
to
he drew
helicopter.
it.
He drew a really intricate,
like every window, every
and just not like on a scratch pad, like a gigantic mural
Yeah.
of everything.
Mhm.
And so, the mind is an amazing thing. Who knows what it can do and what it can't do.
Right.
And I don't think we should put limits on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I don't think that we should also, when somebody says, look at this video, go, oh, well,
Yeah.
there's proof.
Right,
You know.
right.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like it would be fairly easy to prove or disprove this, right? Like number one, take the parent out of the room, right? I mean, it seems like if this is true, it seems like being able to prove that it's true is going to happen like pretty soon now, because people are into it.
Part of the reason why people are skeptical too, because they're like, what the heck? Like, this should be so easy. Like, take literally like 2 steps to the left, and the parent is now inside the room, and now this experiment becomes valid. Like, the fact that you didn't do that means that you must be
So
lying.
why didn't they do that?
Yeah, and that comes down to the subtlety of the real scenario, which comes into play with a lot of science and actual experiments when you try to actually implement it, especially in this case, which is like these autistic kids are, like you said, they're in this environment that you almost can't fathom. Like, they're getting all this information from
Too much
their parents, everything.
stimulus. Yeah.
So they're in a naturally kind of, overstimulated, scared state, and they need a relatively controlled environment to be able to do anything, let
Right.
alone, use telepathic powers. So yeah, it's a matter of like we were saying, like the facilitated communication is very controversial because it used to be done in a certain way. It's evolving to be able to train these kids to just not depend on somebody holding their hand, holding the letterboard, whatever. And that's not to be able to prove that they're telepathic. It's to be able to let them have independence and do whatever the hell they want in life.
Right.
And so that just sort of happens to coincide with like facilitating this experiment, but it's a new thing. This is like relatively new, like last several years when that kind of evolution of this technique has been happening. In fact, I believe the lady that started it, I think it's F2C is the abbreviation, spelled to communicate. She admits, she says, like, I spent the first 20 years of my life or something doing this wrong. I think I was doing facilitated communication the old way before, and like now she's adapted it and learned how to do it right. But this is a very recent thing. So now many kids know this. Most parents that have kids like this, they ask about facilitated communication, and then they're shunned from the autistic school or whatever because they're like, no, like if you believe in this, like you're an idiot because this was proven 20 years ago to be bullshit.
Right.
So there's still a lot of controversy within the community that's preventing people from getting this.
And but that's how science works. It's got to be proven wrong before you prove something right. And that's how. Well, we're talking to a scientist. That's how science works. You have your theory and you test it, and maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not going to work. But you got to throw all the crap out before you get golden.
Right. Well, this was a true spirit of science episode.
Yeah.
I feel like we really lived up to our
name.
name.
It's time to end.
Wrap up.
That went fast.
Yeah.
I'm not as red.
Nice.
Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up. And do we have any idea when the next Spirit of Science is going to be in March?
It'll be in March. We don't know the theme, but we can, maybe we'll do another
Ask
review.
people to send us ideas for things that they might want us to review or something.
Yeah. Email the Merchant's House about things that podcasts or movies or books you'd like us to review.
And you know what? Don't email the Merchant's House. Come to the Merchant's House.
Oh, you could come.
And drop a note off with in the birdcage along with a couple of bucks. And
in the birdcage by the front door for donation.
For donation,
notes or whatever about ideas.
Sure. Yeah.
And well, cool.
Yeah.
It was fun, guys.
Yeah.
It was good to see you guys.
As always.
It's fun.
Missed you guys. All right. Well, listen, go to themerchantshouse.org and sign the petition. If you're anywhere in the world, sign the petition, and let's keep these. I'm giving the finger, but you can't see because it's on camera. Let's keep them out of here, man. Let's keep the Merchant's House going. We love the Merchant's House, and we don't want it to go anywhere. We don't want the people to go anywhere. We certainly don't want the spirits to go anywhere. No. So thanks everybody for watching, and see you next month.
Yeah.
All right.
Guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. All right, now's the awkward time where we're still on camera, but we haven't ended till just